Hi, this is Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. We're back this week. Last week we were out without a Friday video because I was at my national headquarters in Tupelo, Mississippi at AFA, looking at their new building they just built and watching one of the radio shows, and there for a conference all day on a variety of issues. But when I got back early this week, as you know, Governor Eric Holcomb vetoed House Bill 1041. Now, our legislature ended 2 weeks ago, but he vetoed the Fairness in Girls Sports Act, which says that only a biological female can participate in competitive girls sports in public schools K through 12. Now, the bill originally included collegiate sports, and we wanted that to remain, but it was taken out, I think perhaps even by the insistence of the governor early in the process. But he shocked a lot of legislators when he vetoed this bill because there was a couple news stories that indicated he was going to sign it. And it shocked a lot of legislators, shocked me as well, because I've seen the polling on this. Let me give you a couple of those so you know what we're talking about. Politico, which is not a conservative source at all, did a poll last March which found that Democrats were split evenly on whether or not biological males should be allowed in female sports. Among Republicans, it was 74% opposition to only 19% support, and a small majority of independents supported it. A year later, just this week, the same week that Governor Holcomb vetoes the Fairness in Girls Sports Act, House Bill 1041, the National Gallup poll, which you could argue is not very conservative either, perhaps, by 2-1, 62% of Americans say athletes should only compete in the sports that match their born gender. Well, that's basically what House Bill 1041 says. If you are biologically born a female, you can participate in girls' sports in school. If you're not, you can't. And we see what's going on nationally with Leah Thomas, the University of Pennsylvania swimmer who competed for 3 years as a male, who still has male anatomy, still is attracted to women, who's showering in the girls' locker room and breaking all of the girls' records that girls work so hard and many of them set getting to college. So it's a national uproar. The governor claims it's not an issue in Indiana, which is laughable. You and I know that when something goes on in the culture, Indiana is not excluded. It will happen here. I've heard parents say it is happening in certain schools that I won't name right here. But you don't wait until a girl's been hurt or lost her scholarship before you pass a law. And let me tell you this, I've said this before. This is not simply about fairness. If you cannot say that a court or that a pool or that a track are gender specific, then there's no logical way to say that a locker room or shower are gender specific. We don't want men, biological males with mental confusion about their identity or not, in the same locker room and shower room with girls in high school or elementary school. And we know the agenda of the radical transgender movement is to blur the lines so that there are no gender-centered bathrooms or restrooms. It's interesting, when this bill was debated, the trans activists were saying this is an attack on them. Well, it's not an attack on them if you're not participating in the wrong sporting group, if you're not trying to break the boundaries of gender and compete in other groups. Then it was clear that they were upset because they want this on their agenda. They want the ability to pick and choose where they play in sports regardless of their anatomy. And that's just wrong. It's women have different body structures. They have different physical makeup that puts them in a class separate from men, as it should be. Title IX sports, that's what this is all about. It gives girls opportunities to excel and to compete fairly. The bill passed with well over 60 votes in the House and I think 32 votes in the Senate. Now, what's going to happen now? Because the legislature is out of session, what do? Well, the governor vetoed the bill, but the legislature can override the veto when they're back in session, and they will be back in session in May for a technical corrections day. It's a one-day thing where they work on some changes to laws that are needed based on this previous session. that ended a couple weeks ago. They could override it then. If they don't do it then, which I hope they will, they could override it in November. But what I would encourage you to do is contact your state senator and your state representative, particularly your state senator, because the state senator, as I've mentioned, state senate was very weak this year. They could only lose about 6 votes. You need 26 votes to override the governor in the House, in the Senate, and 51 votes in the House. So call your state legislator, ask them to override the veto of the Fairness in Girls Sports Act, HB 1041, that the governor vetoed this week. Contact your legislator next week. Contact your senator at 317-232-9400. Ask them to override the veto of House Bill 1041, the Fairness in Girls Sports Act. Same for your state representative. Call them at 317-232-9600. Ask them to override the veto of the governor's of the Fairness in Girls Sports Act for House Bill 1041. Now, they won't be in session. They won't be down at the State House, most likely. So you'll be just simply leaving a message on their answering machine or with a staff member, which is what happens usually when I ask you to call a legislator anyway. You don't usually talk to your legislator. If you do, obviously, be polite, be short, be brief. Just simply ask them to override the governor's veto and to protect girls' sports in Indiana at 317-232-9400 for the Senate and 317-232-9600 for the House. So, again, we're talking about the governor's veto of the Fairness in Girls Sports Act, House Bill 1041. We expect the legislature will be back in May for Technical Corrections Day. On that day, they can look at this and override the governor's veto with a simple majority. But we need to make our voices heard because I suspect the far left will go after the Senate in particular and try to flip them a few votes to prevent this from happening. Prevent this law from going into place. If they override it in May, the law will go into place immediately, or June 1st, I believe. But this needs to happen before the school year starts in August to protect girls' sports K through 12. So, again, 317-232-9400 for the Senate, 317-232-9600 for the House. Ask them to vote to override the governor's veto of House Bill 1041. Until next week, I'm Micah Clark with the American Family Association of Indiana. Thank you for joining us today.